In recent years, the conversation surrounding concussions and other brain injuries has skyrocketed. In 2016-17, the National Hockey League just recently updated their concussion protocol. Other sports leagues have also taken steps to protect players from such injuries. However, even taking simple hits can be risky. Today, I'll talk about subconcussive impacts and what they mean for you. Here's an overview of what we'll be talking about. First of all, what is a subconcussive impact? And we're going to talk about the difference between a concussion and a subconcussive impact. Second, how they affect you. I'll be talking about diseases like chronic traumatic encephalopathy and CTE in contact sports. And third, how can you avoid them and what can you do about them? Subconcussive impact is defined as a hit that causes less damage to the brain than a concussion. And now you may be asking yourself, what kinds of hits cause these type of damage? Perhaps you hit your head on the ground after falling down. Or maybe you hit a ball into the net using your head while playing soccer. Or maybe you're tackled by the opposing team when you play football. It can be kind of tricky to visualize what's happening to your brain when you or someone else gets hit, but hopefully this animation will clarify a couple things.
But a blow to the head can make the brain move around and bang up against the hard bone of the skull. When this happens, it can cause a temporary change in the way the brain works.
At this point, it might seem like concussive and subconcussive impacts are close to the same thing. However, there are some key differences between them. For a concussion, there are some visible symptoms. These include difficulty thinking clearly, feeling slow, or having bad vision or blurry vision. You might have some mood problems or trouble with sleep. If you ever have any of these symptoms, please tell somebody. It's important that you get the proper treatment so you can get back to your best self. So subconcussive impacts. They don't really have any real symptoms and can even come from relatively minor hits. The main dangers surrounding these are long-term effects. So this is a good segue into how subconcussive impacts can affect you. There are three main factors that determine how bad the damage to your brain is. These include the amount of hits that you take, the amount of rest that you get, and the type of hits that you take. All three of these factors put together can have consequences on your health, but mostly in the future. One of these diseases is called chronic traumatic encephalopathy. You may be asking yourself, what is CTE? CTE is a disease in which a substance called tau builds up in the brain. Essentially, tau causes the cells in your brain to stop working properly. Someone who's been playing contact sports for years may develop the following problems from the buildup of tau. So some common symptoms of CTE include confusion and memory loss, depression and suicidal tendencies, and aggression and impulse control. This type of damage is serious and was first found in the brains of former professional sports players. So next, we're going to take a look at some causes of CTE and what it actually looks like in the brain.
Technique, and we were able to pick up the type of damage that we saw in the brain and now pick it up in the living animal. And this is very helpful as we try to move this into the clinic to detect early fingerprints of the disease. The main message of this work is concussion doesn't cause the CTE, but rather the hit itself, independent of concussion, causes CTE.
Now we'll take a look at some brains from former professional sports players. First, this is a healthy brain. Notice it's a nice blue color, and on the bottom it's pretty much blue everywhere. This is a damaged brain. You can notice that there's certain brown parts. There's even a smaller brown part at the top, and on the bottom picture you can see it's a lot more brown than the one on the healthy brain. This is a heavily damaged brain. As you can see, there are plenty of brown areas, and it's even darker than the damaged brain. You may be wondering if this is even relevant to you or if it'll ever happen to you. Well, there was an investigation into how common CTE is in athletes competing in contact sports. You may be surprised to find out when they examine the brain of 111 former National Football League players. 99% of them had CTE. Isn't that crazy? CTE has even been found in brains of lower level high school and college students. Lastly, now that you know the risks, you may be wondering how can you avoid them and what you might be able to do about them. Well, there is some bad news. The bad news is that subconcussive impacts cannot be avoided, especially when playing contact sports. Instead, here are some alternate methods for reducing the amount of strain on your brain. 1. Increase the amount of rest you get in between major hits. Decrease the amount of hits taken in practice, since this is where most hits take place. And modify contact during drills to reduce how much force the head takes. Now we've reached the end of the presentation. Here are the 4 main takeaways. A subconcussive impact is a brain injury that is less severe than a concussion, but is still dangerous. A high number of subconcussive impacts can cause long-term health problems. Brain injuries such as CTE are common in pro and non-pro athletes who have taken part in contact sports. And you can reduce your risk by modifying hits, taking less of them, and getting rest. Thank you for listening. I hope you can now make an informed decision about your future.